Welcome back, everybody. What is going on? It is Friday, I don't know, July something, but it's a Friday. So, TGIF. Hopefully, you guys are getting ready to have an awesome weekend. I know I am. I got a little work break, so that's always nice, but we're here to talk some fantasy football, baby. And as always, going to keep it short and sweet. Going to keep it sub 20 minutes, like always. That's what I like to do on my show here. Try to keep them short and quick, nothing over 30 minutes max, if I have a guess. So, to introduce our first two running backs this week that I'm talking about, and more of today that I'm talking about, is Javonte Williams and Austin Ekeler, a couple AFC West running backs that I'll be diving into. And honestly, both a couple of studs. Don't get me wrong. Both of these guys have every capability of finishing as the RB1, not just an RB1, the RB1. So Austin Ekeler and Javonte Williams both can do it. I wouldn't be surprised one bit. But let's take a dive into Javonte Williams, one of my favorite, if not my favorite player in the NFL right now is Javonte Williams. This dude won my heart, won my fantasy leagues, just won me over fully to the max last year. Fell in love with him. And man, oh man, he has just been everything that I expected from North Carolina get-go. When he was coming out of North Carolina, I had him pegged as a better David Montgomery. And as of now, he's like an even better version of what I thought he was going to be. So Javonte Williams, as of right now, I have him as my running back 11 this year. But next year, boys and girls, Javonte Williams is going to be the RB1, lock it and load it. I don't care if Melvin Gordon comes back again. He's just going to be too old, but I'm banking that Javonte is going to dominate that backfield next year and be the overall RB1, in which he will be in my rankings. So we'll get to that next year. But Melvin Gordon was brought back this year, and this was something that I was shocked by. Honestly, I thought all the signs were there for Melvin Gordon to leave. Javonte Williams had a breakout season. He, wanted the new contract. He wants the money, wants to go to a winning team. And then all of a sudden, Russell Wilson gets traded to the Broncos. And by that, I mean Russell Wilson, former Wisconsin teammate of Melvin Gordon, got traded to the Broncos. So, of course, Melvin Gordon wants to come back and play with his buddy Russell Wilson. They're still tight, so I guess they still got some good chemistry. I'm not too worried about it because it's going to come to a point where Russell Wilson is going to he's going to have to realize, you know what? I'm going to have to put talent over my friendship. Javonte Williams is by far the better, most talented running back, not just on my team, but on the field. So he needs to play more. And sorry, Melvin, I love you, but we're going to see 30% and below snap percentage. That's at least what I'm banking on. The players and coaches, this is just recently, they voted Javonte Williams as the 10th best running back in his second year. This is better than guys like DeAndre Swift. Tons of good guys. But DeAndre Swift was the first one that popped because he was snubbed. Me being a Lions fan, got pretty upset by that. But nonetheless, yes, sir, Dave. I am very high on Javonte. He's not going to be the overall RB1 this year, I don't think, unless Melvin gets injured. But next year, I'm super, super high on it, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people are jumping on it as well. We kind of saw a little bit of blood in the water with Javonte becoming this overall RB1 when Melvin Gordon was getting contract disputes, not looking like he was going to come back. But then Melvin Gordon came back and it cooled all the Javonte truthers off, myself included. Javonte's a monster. He was featured on Angry Runs multiple times. He won it once. I should have won it multiple times, but it's a whole different stereo. Javonte, he's just a beast of himself. He's a guy that I like to describe him as a freak of nature. It truly gives me like Marshawn Lynch, Adrian Peterson vibes when this guy runs the ball. He will not go down. One single person cannot take this guy down. You have to have a pack on him like wolves on a hyena or wolves on a big hippo or something. That's literally what it is. It's Javonte Williams is this big hippo, elephant, whatever hyenas eat or wolves, and they're all jumping on him one by one by one. And finally, 25 yards down the field after one has touched him, the second has got on him, he finally goes down, but that's after he got his extra 10, 15 yards off the broken tackles. So Javonte Williams, let's talk about forced missed tackles. He had the most forced missed tackles in 2020 in the college football season. This was the most in Pro Football Focus college football history. So that only includes from years 2014 to years 2021, which is still pretty remarkable. Javonte also holds the record for most forced missed tackles in 2021. This was his rookie year, folks. This also is PFF's record for the NFL. 733 qualifying seasons. So 733 players qualified for most forced missed tackles in a season. Javonte's got that record in his rookie year. Splitting time with Melvin Gordon. Like, come on, folks. This guy's a stud. Evaded tackles per game, 7th. Most broken tackles, 31 in the NFL. He's just a beast. He literally gives me Derrick Henry vibes, but differently. He breaks the tackles like Henry, but he's got a different run style / play style. Henry would just run right through you. He was 6th in receiving touchdowns for running backs, so he can catch the rock. Don't be too worried about that. I don't expect Melvin Gordon to have another, 8 total touchdowns on the year. He did have 2 receiving touchdowns as opposed to Javonte's 3. So I think we're going to see closer to 4-1. Maybe Javonte getting 4 receiving touchdowns to Melvin's 2. But I think Javonte will at least have double or more, not just receiving, but rushing touchdowns than Melvin Gordon too. So last year, talk about the splits. They were very similar. Both had 203 carries. Both had over 900 yards. Javonte 903, Melvin 918. Javonte 4 rushing touchdowns to Melvin's 8 rushing touchdowns. Javonte only had 7 total touchdowns, 4 on the ground, 3 receiving, as opposed to Melvin's 8 on the ground, 2 receiving. I think a lot of that is going to change. Javonte is just too good of a player to not have the ball inside the 5, inside the 10. The coaches are going to know it. Russell Wilson's going to know it. The offense is going to know it. And once he takes over the backfield, it's no looking back, because 30-year-old Melvin Gordon, he's not going to come back and win his role back. Even if he gets injured, even if, he misses one game because of COVID, because he hurt his little finger or something, I don't know. But once Javonte gets a hold of this backfield, it is over. Because we saw it last year. He had one game where he had over 20 carries, 20 touches in a game, and this was against the Chiefs. He had 23 carries, 102 yards, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 76 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown in a 22-9 loss with a Drew Lock-led poor offense. So you throw Russell Wilson in this equation, he's putting up more points. I don't care if Russell Wilson, throws for 300 yards, Courtland Sutton's having a game. This is only going to help Javonte. There will be times where Sutton and Judy break out, and maybe even Albert O. But nonetheless, this good offensive production in the long run will give extra red zone, extra 10 zone, extra 5 zone carries to Javonte, which he will absolutely capitalize on more than what Courtland Sutton is capitalizing, more than what Jerry Jeudy will capitalize on with Russell Wilson coming in. So we know what Javonte is capable of with the 20-plus touch game. It's just, is he going to get that? So it's interesting. We know what Melvin Gordon is. He is 30 years old. He's been kind of injury prone, hasn't played a full season, I don't think, since his rookie or second year in the NFL. It's been a minute, but if Melvin Gordon breaks down, then you have a surefire locked and loaded RB1. If Melvin Gordon plays 17 games, you probably still have an RB1, maybe a really good RB2. So Javonte Williams, he's going at the 211 right at the start of the 3rd round. And for me, this is kind of a steal, because you're not just getting a great player, you're getting like the best handcuff ever in NFL history. And by that, I mean, he's not even a handcuff. He's just, in a sticky situation. So if we were to get some type of injury from Melvin Gordon, or if he just, falls off a cliff, in which that happens to running backs when they turn 30, Melvin Gordon, it wouldn't shock me. So Javonte Williams, he's young. He's going into his 2nd year. The Broncos know what they have. And it wouldn't shock me one bit to get, once the Broncos get to week 8, if Javonte really took off in this workload and really, just came into his own. Shout out my buddy Zach throwing the Go Lions in there. But other than that, yeah, Javonte, I think he's a good value at 211. A dynasty talk. Let's talk a little dynasty. You got to take Javonte in Dynasty. If you're starting up in a Dynasty league, he is my number one. I should say Jonathan Taylor's my number one, but he's neck and neck with JT. I have no qualms if you want to take Javonte Willliams as your first pick in a rookie startup dynasty draft, because I think this dude is going to be a beast for years to come. He's an angry runner. He's fun to watch. He's just a stud, honestly. And a couple other things. He saw more targets than Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, and David Montgomery. He had 10 carries inside the 5. Melvin Gordon had 11 carries inside the 5. I do not expect a split. I mentioned this earlier. I'm thinking we're going to get more of like a 16 to like 8. Like I said, I think Javonte is going to double Melvin in just about every category. If it's rushes, receptions, targets, yards, I think Javonte is going to have him doubled on everything by week 17, pending a healthy season. Let's move on to our next man, Sir Austin Ekeler. And yes, I know the title of this is, who would you rather want, Austin Ekeler or Javonte Williams? And obviously, we're taking Austin Ekeler. But at draft cost, who would you rather want? Because Austin Ekeler is coming with a rich price tag at the 104. So essentially, you could get Javonte and another player at, the 104, 103, or you could get Austin Ekeler and someone else at, the 211, 301-ish pick. So let's take a deep dive into Austin Ekeler. This dude is an absolute stud, and I'll just say it off the get-go. My first stat that I found most impressive, he had 4 games over 26 fantasy points. This was tied for Jonathan Taylor, which was most in the NFL. The next highest was Joe Mixon with 3 games above 26 points. Next up, I only think a couple guys had 2. Najee had a couple. Kamara had 1 or 2. But no one except for Jonathan Taylor and Austin Ekeler had 4 fantasy games of over 26 points. And I bring up 26 points because if your running back is getting 26, that's going to give you a massive boost on the day. You are likely going to be winning your game, your matchup, unless your team, craps the bed. If you have a solid outing and have that 26-point performance, you're winning no matter what. So, you should say no matter what, but you know what I mean. It helps a lot. So this guy, Austin Ekeler, he has that massive upside. He can win you the multiple weeks just off of those, huge touchdown upsides. We saw it last year. He had 4 touchdowns in 1 game, 2 receiving, 2 rushing. He can do it all, folks. This guy, he's a stud. He has every year, he's had at least 2 receiving touchdowns. And I will say the odd year was 2020, where he only had 2 receiving touchdowns. In 2019, he had 8, and in 2021, he had 8. I expect, honestly, 10 wouldn't shock me. If he had a 10-10, another 20-yard total, 20 total touchdowns, geez, say that 10 times fast, outing, I wouldn't be shocked. Have 10 and 10 on rushing and receiving, wouldn't shock me one bit. Austin Ekeler is a beast. And another reason why I love this dude, and speaking of why I love this dude, drafted him in my Scott Fish Bowl, first overall pick, not overall pick, but my first overall pick at the 111. Might have been a little early, but nonetheless, I like him. Also, shout out Javonte Williams. I drafted him too. Couldn't leave the draft. Thought my boy Javonte. Took him in like the 4th-ish round, maybe 402. That sounds right. But Ekeler, one thing I love about this guy is he is a man of the people. We've seen this last year. We saw this year. We still see it. He's tweeting. He's posting. He's making fantasy football vids. He is talking fantasy football with Liz Loza on Yahoo Fantasy. So this guy knows what's up. He knows that he's got fantasy players that are rooting for him, counting on him to win that week. So he's not going to go out at the 1-yard line like Nick Chubb did. He's not going to lay down like, Todd Gurley tried to against the Lions. Jeez, okay, I think get that out. He's going to get those points. He's going to get those touchdowns. He cares. And that's what I like to see about Austin Ekeler. He's one guy that, is very rare, because a lot of these players, they just don't care. And I don't blame them. You're football. That's your job. You take that serious. Fantasy, it's fun and games. So not hating on that. But if you do respect us fantasy players, boy, oh boy, you are getting double the love and respect right back at you. And that goes to you, Austin Ekeler, just in case you're watching. But another thing I love about Austin Ekeler is he's just a real stand-up guy. He's a great guy. Has been just a solid piece for the Chargers ever since he got drafted. He's battled behind stud running backs in I'm drawing a blank, but the Chargers have had studs with its LT, Michael Turner, or whoever. But Austin Ekeler has made his way into the next line of stud Charger running backs. The Chargers did add Isaiah Spiller, running back out of Texas A&M, a guy who a lot of us thought was going to be, a lot better, or drafted, I should say, a lot higher than expected. But all in all, it was. I just lost train of thought there, but let's dive back into Austin Ekeler. We're still talking him. He had the second most targets amongst RBs, second most receptions amongst RBs. So you were looking at the reception king, Austin Ekeler, for running backs at least. This dude, he's a stud. In PPR, honestly, you can make the case that he's every bit as good as CMC. And I know that's saying a lot, but this has, injury baked into it. And by that, I mean Austin Ekeler has been a workhorse. Year 1, 16 games. Year 2, 14 games. Year 3, 16 games. Year 4, 10 games. Year 5, 16 games. So he has only not played a full season 2 out of his 5 years. I'll absolutely take that. He's played 14 games in 4 out of his 5 years. I'll absolutely take that. So Austin Ekeler, he's not a guy that, is injury prone, is someone that I'm worried about on a risk factor. He's a guy that you could go all in on and feel absolutely okay about. A couple other things about Austin Ekeler. He had 8 receiving touchdowns that led all running backs, 20 total touchdowns, like I mentioned. Led the running backs in 8 red zone targets, 18. Led running backs in red zone receptions, 15. Most rush yards of his career last year, which was 911. Yes, I know, folks, that seems very, very low. And that's because it is. It is very low. He hasn't hit 1,000 yards rushing once in his 5-year career, which is pretty odd. The Chargers, they brought back Mike Williams. They obviously still have Keenan Allen. Their tight end situation is a little bit murky. They don't really have Jared Cook or a solid guy. It's kind of like Donald Parham or I forget who else, or Jason Moore. Shout out Fantasy Footballers if you see the tight end. But they have a phenomenal offense. And if Austin Ekeler can just get going on, the run game, he could get those rushes, then I would not be surprised to see a 1,000 type season for him, especially if he plays a full 17-game season. I know they did bring in Isaiah Spiller, and I know there has been talks of Austin Ekeler, dialing his touches back and, dialing his workload back. But when you're trying to win ball games and you're in the AFC West with Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs and Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, and Darren Waller now, and the Raiders, and now you got Broncos with Russell Wilson, you're going to need to score double the amount of points. So Austin Ekeler, this is a guy that's going to be, he's going to be playing just about till the end in almost every game, it seems. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of blowout games where, the Chargers are just dominating and Austin Ekeler comes out and it's Isaiah Spiller to clean it up. So I do think that this high-powered offense is going to help Eck. He's going to be a stud. I'm looking at their schedule right now. Couple games, I will say, week 3, week 4, they do play the Jaguars and the Texans, in which those could be blowouts, in which leading to Austin Ekeler, not playing as much. But other than that, they got some tough opponents in which they're going to get into shootouts. Obviously, the Broncos twice, the Chiefs twice, and the Raiders twice. But on top of that, they have the Rams, the Colts, Titans, Dolphins, Cardinals, the 49ers, Falcons, Seahawks, Browns, and Texans and Jaguars, like I mentioned. So not an impossible schedule for Austin Ekeler, but not the easiest in the world. But one thing I will say is that in-division schedule, I think, will help him out a lot. This whole team, I think, will be scoring points. One, if it's Mike Williams, if it's, Ekeler, someone will be benefiting from all this high-powered offense. And just to wrap things up real quick, let's talk a few more stats on Ekeler. He was 5th in rushing TDs, 2nd in red zone attempts, 4th on inside the 5 carries. He only missed one game and scored single digits just twice in the season last year. So this guy's very reliable. You could count on him to, not put a stinker out, put a 2-point buster performance. He's at least, getting 7 to 9, which were those 2 single digit performances. But other than that, like I mentioned, 4 games over 26 points tied with Jonathan Taylor. This dude, he's a guy who can win your week. And that's the players that I like to get. Players that can win your week just off of having a phenomenal game. And with all that being said, you bake in all the ADP, all the value, where these guys are going. If it's coming down to Javonte or Austin Ekeler, this one's tough. I would have to look at who's going around the 211, but boy, oh boy, do I love Javonte Williams. And for me, the 211, if that sticks, that's value right there, man. This guy, I think, will finish as an RB1 despite Melvin Gordon playing the full season or not. And if Melvin were to fall off a cliff or, just get injured, you got yourself an RB1, locked and loaded. Don't even need to think twice about it. Like, who's going to steal his carries? Mike Boone? Come on. Not happening at all. I know Russell Wilson, there has been, let Russ cook, and he can do it. But we know that he likes to help out his running backs. He had beast mode, Marshawn Lynch, Chris Carson go off for quite some time. So obviously there's, data to back it up. But if it's between Javonte and Austin Ekeler, got to go with my boy Javonte. Just love him so much. And if you're going to go back even to Dynasty, going back to my boy Javonte. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I cannot wait to revisit this show next year when I'm talking about him. Just double hyping him up because I'll definitely be bringing this back up. But that should do it, folks. Once again, thank you all for joining in. As always, you can check me out on Twitter at EverydayFFB. Check out the Fantasy Six Pack on Twitter at Fantasy Six Pack, SIXPACK. On Twitter, they are posting all sorts of good stuff. Check them out on their website, fantasysixpack.net. As always, give me some comments, some likes, some love. Love it on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever it is. I love all that good stuff. But as always, thank you all for joining. And next week, I will be rounding out the AFC West episode. Talking CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Josh Jacobs, the man who might not even be there next year. So it's going to be a good episode. You guys will not want to miss. But thanks again, and see you all next week.